So welcome everyone. Welcome to our today's webinar about ARIS Connect and the newest release on ARIS Connect. My name is Dominik van der Hagen. I'm a director in the product management team at Software AG, and I will give you today an overview on basically what you can do with ARIS Connect and specifically what the newest release can help or can support you in your today's activities. So the goal for the session today is basically first, if you are not an expert of ARIS Connect, I want to give you an overview on how it in general can help you drive your process transformation activities, for sure learning some basics about the product. But then for the experts among you, I want to give you also some deeper insights in new capabilities, new features from the ARIS Connect 10 release, and especially the service release 2 we just released. The agenda for today looks like this. So first, I will start with a short overview on the situation, background, what's the idea behind Connect, why is it so important to talk about topics that we cover with Connect, and then I will deep dive into the product, and for sure we'll give you also a short demo about the product and its basic use cases. And we will end with a summary and with a Q&A section. By the way, the session will be recorded, and if you have any questions, you always have the option to use the chat window to post your questions, but we will collect all the questions and we'll have a look at the questions at the end of the session. So let's basically start. So I believe that in 2017, when we look at what's happening in the market, I think it's quite a challenging time from my perspective, because we see so much happening within the companies, within their transformation activities. We see new business models coming up, and we see as well a lot of change within the companies in order to implement those business models. And to kick off the discussion today, I just took out two examples that I like very much. So one example is what you can see on the slide here. We really see that as of today, companies are much closer to the customers with new touch points coming up. Basically, customers have much more capabilities to find out what their customers need at the point where customers need a certain product or a certain service. And you just see two examples here on the slide. So one you might be familiar with. When you are at the airport, you typically, as of today, have the option to rate basically if you have been satisfied with the customer experience you just experienced. So you really can rate actually what has happened, and you can give it a good rating or a bad rating or a medium rating, and the service provider basically knows at this point in time already if that what they offer to you as a customer was a good or a bad experience. Another touch point that I like very much as well is some innovation from Amazon, which is called the Amazon Dash button, where customers clearly can trigger the purchasing process on new products at the point and at the place in their household when it actually happens. So these are two touch points, and I think there are a good demonstrations actually on how traditional business can get much closer to the customer, can get more data on what customers basically need. So we really see that new ways of customer interactions are coming up in different flavors. So another example that I brought to you to kickstart the discussion for today is two examples from retail sector. So you might be familiar with the approach from Amazon, the Amazon Go, where customers just walk into the store, take something, put it into their bag, and then walk out of the store, and everything is being done automatically. There are for sure people who are still looking at a few things so that everything is sorted, but basically you don't have to wait to pay, for instance. You don't have to look for your credit card or your coins. Everything is happening automatically. So this is a completely new business model coming up with further automatization, basically. So further processes which are much closer to the needs of certain customers, because nobody basically has the need to wait in a long line in order to pay the goods he wants to buy. Another example even goes further, is the 24-hour unmanned convenience store in Shanghai, where there's simply no people anymore in the store. So everything's being done automatically. And I think those are two nice examples because they reflect very much what's happening in a business, not only in retail. It really so all industries basically are facing the challenges that they have to transform, that they have to reinvent themselves in order to be more customer-centric. And in combination with the examples I've shown you on the slide before, with new touch points, you really get new insight into what your customers need and can change for the better. So in order to change for the better, and basically now looking on what's the relationship or the relation to ARIS, basically, I try to visualize this based on the SIPOC. You might be familiar with the approach of supplier, input, process, output, customer. And I think when you look at new business models coming up, you really can have a look at this from the end. So basically what those new business models are basically doing, they are creating more happy customers. Customers are satisfied by what they get. They actually get the experience they need. They are happy. That's what we all want to achieve basically in order to sell more goods, sell better services. How do we achieve that? We typically achieve that as of today when you look at the technology and what's coming up based on these new technologies through intelligent products, for instance, and internet-based services. So just take the example of the Amazon Go, where people go into the store, where they take something out. There is for sure some additional intelligence with the bread that you're, for instance, buying. So there's some chip maybe that's communicating automatically, or there's maybe some observation technology that finds out that it's you, the customer, with some facial recognition, that it basically knows that you've bought a certain product. And it's a combination of products and services in the end. So you have your account, you have your credit card, this account, everything is happening automatically. So this is basically what's happening, and it's happening in so many markets. As I said, it's not only in the retail, it's also in the manufacturing, in the pharmaceutical, in the healthcare, and so on. So what do we need actually to achieve this output? It's clearly that you have to think of the processes and organization beneath. And so you have to know the customer personas, you have to know the needs, you have to understand basically what you need to do in order to meet those objectives. You need to have a smooth collaboration across all functions in place so that basically the experience that the customer sees in the end with the purchasing process basically is something that's happening based on the interaction of so many people within the company. It's for sure about applying best practices, because such a business model like the examples we've seen, it's not something that should just happen at one place in the world. It should scale. So you should be able to replace a good or best practice in different locations across the whole world. So you need to have, let's say, a platform basically where you can scale and can share best practices so that the people basically can implement those new business models. And it's about well-defined responsibility and accountability. So I clearly believe that a good outcome always needs a good process in place as well. So you for sure have to define this process and its responsibilities and accountabilities. Going one step further, so what's the input for this process and organization? It's about so many things. So it's for sure about the people who are involved in the process. It's about the material. It's about information like the customer behavior, so that you can analyze the customer behavior, or that you can analyze certain feedback streams like coming from this touch points at the airport where you can rate a certain customer experience. So you only can make something better if you actually have the data and if you have a good analysis on the data. And again, looking one step further, basically, it's also about the suppliers of all of this. So it's about your customers giving you the information, what they need. It's about the partners you're working with, but it's also looking at the competition. So what's happening outside the world, what's the benchmark in your industry, and it's about some inside-out perspective. So you need to have some retrospection in place as well, where you ask yourself, where have we been good, where have we been not so good, and what can we learn from this? So I believe when we look at the new business models coming up, we always can explain a good outcome in the end, a happy customer, with those different dimensions. And I like it very much, because basically it now comes to the thinking actually why ARIS Connect can help you so much. Because when you think of such big changes, transformational changes that your customer or your company is going through, basically, they all have to have an understanding on their organizational truth. So I named that as the single point of truth, the SPOT, basically. So this single point of truth, that's important for many different people within the company. So it starts for sure with some triggering of a change. So you need to have an understanding on the impacts of a new change or the scope of the change. So when you have different business departments sitting at a table, if you are in a large company, it's always hard actually to have a common denominator, something that you can talk about. And if you have such a single point of truth, it clearly helps you drive transformational activities. It's for sure about designing the change. So how does the change look like? Is this a new process? Is this some automation that you want to increase, or is it some custom IT implementation where you want to develop a new app or something like that? So before you actually do it, you have to have an understanding on the scope of it. You have to describe it basically. Here you again have to have a common understanding on the single point of truth as well. And for sure, it's about rolling out changes. So in the end, you always have people actually who are interacting with customers. People are applying best practices or standards. So you have to have for them as well a common platform where you can share the single point of truth, the organizational truth. So what I like very much is that actually a recent analyst told that the digital twin. So we see that more and more companies are creating what they call a digital twin, something that really reflects how the company is working, which describes the interdependencies. When we look at basically what's behind such a change that you're trying, we see that there's a change cycle for sure always in place. So it always starts with a decision stage where you have the management involved, where you have management stakeholders from the process organization involved, where you have the business functions who are driving certain changes. And then you always have the people who are actually working on a change. So typically domain architects, designing how the business looks like in the future, or quality architects or IT architects, often also collaborating with consultants. And then when you come and when you have to change design, when you're rolling it out, it's about run and execute your new 2B and your new business model, for instance, where you have the real end users who are doing the real business basically. So there are the procurement managers, the HR experts, the shop assistants, the clerks, and so on. And they all have a different interest of information basically. So while the management might be more interested in strategy definition, in new business models which are described and which are shared with other managers, or impact analysis before a certain scope is designed, the middle layer, the adaptation layer, the architects basically, they take care on the business processes and the business process models. They take care on KPI trees, org charts, application landscape. And when you then look at the employees, the business users in the end, they take care on business, on best practices, or their work instructions for the job they have to perform, or the policies they have to consider in order to be compliant, or the task and team performance indicators. So all different dimensions, different deliverables, different assets that they're interested in, which are basically feeded from, or should be feeded from, one single point of truth. And basically, we now come at the point, basically, what we do with ARIS and ARIS Connect. We are basically providing the capability to set up such a single point of truth based on an enterprise repository where you can describe all the different pieces of information that the people need in order to get their job done. So different people with different roles, basically. And the ARIS Connect that we're going to talk about today is really giving the people an access to this single source of truth. So different people with different roles get access to their deliverables, the things and the information they are interested in. So let's have a closer look at ARIS Connect. So I already mentioned, so ARIS Connect is being used to create such a single source of truth and giving access to the people. How do we do it? So we do it by offering an embedded, integrated web environment, which basically provides several pillars. So it starts with the publishing and contribution, where basically end users have access to the information out of this single source of truth. It's as well modeling in a web environment, as we see that changes need to be implemented quite fast. So ARIS Connect offers an HTML5 environment for modeling that fully runs in the browser. It's a built-in governance functionality, some out-of-the-box workflows that we're offering for managing changes and change workflows. It's about the document storage, because we see so much information in the form of documents as well. So as I mentioned before, you might have standard operating procedures or policies, which are an important part of your business process architecture. And then this is information which is being placed in document storage. And then it's about social collaboration as well, because we see so many people and also new generations growing up with technology. They are using Facebook all the day or LinkedIn all the day, and they are familiar basically with a very close collaboration in their daily activities. So why should the people who have a look at the process description, at the policy, about the standard operating procedures, or even the process designers, why shouldn't they have also the possibility to collaborate around these processes? So this is basically an embedded environment that ARIS Connect offers. I used to explain in the past quite a lot ARIS Connect based on the idea of a day in the life of a business process, because I like that very much. Basically, it always starts at some angle, basically from the end user viewpoint, where the people consume information, and then there might be come into a change cycle, into feedback loop. They want to collaborate. They have a question. They want to post a question, and then they want to maybe propose an enhancement to the owner of this business process, so they run into the improvement cycle. So then there are the domain architects, as I mentioned before, the modelers who are analyzing the changes, prioritizing the changes, planning those changes for our next release, doing the change for sure as well, so adapting, for instance, a business process model. And then I make it a little bit faster, closing the cycle again by rolling out the changes again to the people. So this is a cycle that happens all the time. Even if you're implementing new business models, you always have to ask yourself as well, how do I have to adapt existing business processes? And maybe you also have to invent new processes or new interfaces to other processes that always run this change cycle again and again. And I'm showing you this because of a positioning of our ARIS stack. So basically what you're doing with ARIS Connect, you're there offering capabilities to the end users. So everything which is very close to the non-experts, that's what we're doing with ARIS Connect. So with lightweight modeling, but as well with the lightweight publishing environment and all the capabilities we're offering there. While our Java technology, our classical ARIS architect, where you have advanced analysis functionality, this is something which is clearly for the design and the analysis stage and the consolidation and management stage. And in the end, you basically have a cycle with different tooling below. So let's have a look at what we did with the latest release, which is basically the ARIS Connect 10.0 Service Release 2. It has just been released a few weeks ago. And basically, I picked out some highlights, and one of the nicest highlights I pick out is basically the redesigned home view. You will see it in the demo later on. So we've redesigned the home view, so you can have a left-hand panel where basically you see all the important functionalities in ARIS Connect. You will see personalized welcome message. You have a new quick start panel where you can also add your own tiles basically, and this is a very nice entry into the ARIS Connect. I will show it to you in the demo later on. The next highlight that I want to show you is basically the My Content functionality. So just imagine you have a large community of users within your company. They should have access to the single point of truth. So they should have a very easy access to their processes, to their standard operating procedure documents, for instance, and they're basically not knowing what they have to consume. So they log into the system, they know what job role, job function they basically have, and they click on My Content, simply type in their role, and then see all the processes which are relevant for them, or the documents, or the IT systems. So this is a highly configurable functionality which gives end users a very easy entry into the world of your architecture, basically. The next highlight, and I will show everything in a demo as well, is the new view generation. So you might want to focus on certain aspects of your single point of truth. So maybe you want to see the lean process and want to get rid of all the additional details that somebody added to the business process model. Or maybe you're a risk manager and you want to focus on the risks in the processes, but don't want to see the applications or the roles which are involved. Or maybe you want to see combination and want to see basically the process with the risks, but it should be layouted in a way that you see which role is performing which task. So then this is something that the new view generation is doing. So it really gives you the option to change the view on your business process model or also other models based on the details that you have in the model. So you can change the grouping and you can change the layout of the model. So change from vertical to horizontal. And the nice thing here as well is that you can combine everything through out-of-the-box or configured view as well. So you will see it later on that you can decide basically what your end users should be able to see in such a view. And then last highlight I want to talk about before we have a look at the system itself is basically the new plugins functionality. Because we see that when you set up such a system for quite a huge community in your company, so which serves as the single point of truth, as an enterprise management system, basically, then you might have the need to have additional functionality, additional apps within the environment that might not be there out of the box from Software AG. So just imagine you have a specific use case, some specific functionality that could be based on ARIS data, but could be also based on data from third-party systems. And you want to embed that in the ARIS Connect environment the same way as the out-of-the-box functionality is embedded. And with the new plugins, you have the option basically to develop such apps and to register them in a list. Basically, you get a signature for that. That's a stable app, and you can activate it, can deactivate it, see at a glance, like an app store, basically, who's responsible for which app, for which release. And this is a great functionality in order to explore or to have more functionalities which are not coming from the standard, but which is still as stable as the standard because the functionality is sandboxed in the end. So if you have the need for additional functionality which is not part of the standard yet and are thinking of such an individual implementation, just have a look at the plugins. It's a really nice way actually to keep the advantages of the standard in combination with the flexibility of own plugin functionality. So let's now switch to the system basically and have a look at the ARIS Connect. And the first thing that you might see is that our out-of-the-box colors basically have changed a bit. So we've changed the overall coloring to Software AG Blue. For sure, you can configure that as well in your own environment. But what you see now in the plain vanilla ARIS Connect, so this is fully unconfigured. That's how we ship it out of the box. You see the new landing page, as I mentioned before, with the quick start panel with the different tiles, where you can, for instance, browse into the repository for viewing, or where you can have a look at the tasks in your ARIS process governance process board, or where you can simply search and so on. This is for sure based on the functionality you have, on licenses you have, so different users see different tiles here. And the nice thing here is you can easily configure that as well. So you can configure the size, can change the icon, or even can have links to other systems within your company, for instance, to your learning management system as well. So a great new way to deep dive into the, or let's say have a nice starting point for the people which are entering the single point of truth system. So we're now clicking to the My Content, what I mentioned before. So basically the My Content is, in simple words, a role-based search. So it's something that does not need to be configured up front. So it really works based on the data you have in your ARIS repository already. It can be configured so that it fits your specific method conventions as well. And as I mentioned before, just imagine I'm new to the system. I only know that I have been hired as a regional sales administrator, and I just start to type in regional, and you see I get some proposals here. So regional sales administrator. So I know that I have some colleagues as well who have the role of a local dealership sales reps. And I simply add those roles here. I could also be adding a location. And you basically see the list of processes which are relevant for local dealership sales rep and regional sales administrator. You can also, for instance, have a look at the application systems which are relevant to them. So these are now the application systems that are in a direct or in an indirect relationship to those two roles we have here, because they are part of the processes, for instance. The same could be done for the documents. So you know, when you're modeling this, you might have a task and you have a role assigned to this task, and then you have a document assigned to this task as well. So then the system automatically retrieves the right information here in the list, and from there people can easily jump into the details of this. So we're not going to do that. So we're not going to jump into the details of our sales order process, because that's what we're interested in. So here it is, the sales order processing as is. And we're now coming to the description of this business process. So I said at the very beginning, it's about a single source of truth, a single point of truth, basically, in your company where you're rolling out information. This is the process, how it has been designed, how it has been approved by the business process owner. And if you're not an expert of ARIS Connect, you might not know that already. If you're an expert, it's redundant to you. But you know that with ARIS Connect, you have the option to present information from this single source of truth in many different ways. So what you can see here is a textual description of a business process with a table that's basically showing all the different tasks or functions of this process, a description of those functions, the roles which are involved, the IT systems, and so on. And this is dynamically created out of the repository, so nothing which is generated upfront through an export or something like that. So depending on the type of information you're showing, you can have different sorting capabilities as well. So maybe you want to sort according to the way how it has been modeled, or maybe according to the process flow. You definitely have the options to manipulate the system in a way that it fits your specific use cases as well. So next one I want to show you briefly is the steps view, because that's something that quite a lot of our customers like as well, which really makes a process something which is not, let's say, not familiar to everybody in a large organization. Not everybody is thinking in processes. And basically, if you expose a business process model to people who are not familiar to this way of thinking, it might be too much of information. And with the steps, you basically can reduce the information to some digestible part of it. So you really can have a look step by step what's happening in a certain business process. And I'm just clicking through the process. You see, I get a short description on this task that needs to be performed. I see the roads involved, I see the documents involved, and I can even have a description as well in a more vivid manner. For instance, I want to show a video, or maybe I want to show a certain image. I can do that really here from the system in a very, very easy way. When talking about the easy way, basically, it's worth mentioning that let's say in the past, let's say 20 or 25 years, a lot of information that has been fed to our ARIS repository has been coming through modeling for sure. With the ARIS Connect, we have some additional advanced way to get data into the repository, which is called the contribution. So you really see that also non-experts have the possibility to easily add additional information into the repository. And why is this so important? Because this is so important because you have many people who have the knowledge in their mind about their processes, or their document owner. They know their document, but they are not the business process designers per se. For sure, this is the vision we see as well. But they might not be familiar with modeling, with the EPC, with the BPMN. And they simply want basically to have this easy and simplified views to feed a description into the repository about a business process, or who want to add some additional information about the validity date, for instance. So they can do that in a very, very simple manner through the so-called contribution functionality that I've just shown you. Basically, what I missed to say, what I wanted to say now, everything that you've seen at the moment is basically a business process EPC model here in my example, something that has been designed in that way. So with a process interface, that's the symbol here, with a start event, with the first function or task, with some roles involved, with some document involved. So that's the way how the information has been described in the modeling. You can do for sure the same for BPMN models as well. But what I want to show you now basically is something which is very new with the service release 2. As I mentioned before, you might want to focus on certain information. So you might not want to see all the details of this model here with the system, with the role, with some additional information. You really want to be lean. And then with the new view generation, you simply can change the view of your model and get rid, for instance, of all the additional details. Maybe you're then focusing on some type of information. So you want to see the process with the, let's say, the IT systems in place. So then you see the system is automatically adding the IT systems again. Maybe you're now thinking, that's a nice view, but I really want to have, let's say, a group by sorting as well. So I really want to see the process flow grouped by the IT systems. Then you see here, you basically can manipulate the system that way that you really see that certain parts of the process are being performed by certain application systems. And as I mentioned before, in the end, you for sure do that as well in order to configure some out-of-the-box views. So what you see now is some out-of-the-box swim lane view that we just configured in the plain vanilla ARIS Connect, where you can see your business process with all the details, layouted in a way based on the roads and lanes which are created based on the different roads. So this is the new view generation that I briefly wanted to show to you. So when you're looking at this type of information in your single point of truth, as said at the example where I mentioned a day in the life of a business process, you might want to collaborate with the people. So you might really want to ask a question about the business process, maybe about a certain part of the process. Then with the collaboration, people can simply add an object, for instance, so like the document here, new vehicle sales contract, and ask a question. So this is an example question. They can post this to the public, so everybody who has access to this business process and to the feed here. They can even have it very private, so just as a private comment. Or if you have collaboration groups or groups from our ARIS user management component, the UMC in place, then you can also publish those collaboration comments to just a certain target group. So you also see there's a reference to this document that I just added as a context, and you basically now see you have a tag here, so you can filter the stream and really can communicate in a very agile manner with the people and ask questions, give comments or likes. So really new and fancy style on working with models and the content. I believe that's very important because basically when you're designing change, coming again to the big picture, when you're designing change and rolling out changes to the organization, you have to have the people involved. So you have to have a buy-in of the end users who have to perform and execute change in their daily job. And in order to get the people involved, you have to give them a voice. So you have to give them an option to give feedback, to ask questions, and to be very active about the business processes you've designed and roll out to the organization. This is as I always say, the collaboration, the very agile collaboration, social collaboration. But for sure, when you're designing change, you have to be much more formal as well. So you have owners in your organization, you have you are audited and you have certain requirements you have to fulfill at the end. Then you have the option to easily deploy a process, a governance process about change, for instance. For instance, you want to raise a certain change request. So then basically this out-of-the-box governance workflows come into play where people can propose a change. So this is just an example that I just type in, and this is then basically being sent directly to the owner of this process, and the owner has the only visibility on those changes. There are additional workflows that I don't want to go into the details here. We're now assuming we have an understanding on the change. We want to implement the change, and we now simply jump into the lightweight modeling environment coming from the ARIS Connect Designer, where you see that everything is running in the browser. You have an easy option to change the model, and the only thing that I want to highlight here basically today is something that we released some time ago, but not so long, is the new modeling table, where you have the option to really add as well additional information by just using your keyboard. So just imagine I want to add the regional sales administrator here as an additional role, then you have the easy option basically to just type that in. Or you want to add another function. So I'm just using the keyboard. I'm not using my mouse at the moment. So this is just an example task that I just here place in, and you see the model is layouted automatically, and you don't have to take care on the model itself. So it's a great way basically when you are in a workshop mode, when you are talking to people who give you their knowledge about how the process is flowing, and when you don't want to bother too much about the design of your business process, if a certain object is on a left-hand space or right-hand space, or just creating the first process sequence at the very beginning. So this is a great way actually to kickstart the design of processes in a very lightweight manner, or when you want to adapt something. You for sure have as well the access to the collaboration comments I mentioned before. So you see here, as I said, in a very agile manner, the comments which came from the people. So let's get back to the ARIS Connect portal. So let's have a look at the enterprise process map, so which is basically some level 1 process. And basically, This is your classical value-added chain diagram about the core processes, management and support processes. And what we did with the ARIS 10.0 release already, but what I think is worth mentioning here, also when you again talk about the single point of truth in your organization, then it's not only about some, let's say, some information how the company should work. So the to-be state, maybe it's also about adding additional information how things are going on at the moment. So how process change is being implemented at the moment, or how certain process KPIs are looking like. And in order to support this use case, we introduced with the 10.0, with the April release, a new product based on ARIS Connect, which is called ARIS Aware. So this gives you the capability to embed charts and dashboards into the context of your process descriptions, for instance, or your application diagrams. So what you can see here at the example is some KPIs which are giving you information about the progress on your process transformation. So how much of the information on your process models has been maintained already? How many of my mandatory properties or attributes have been designed already? And this is a great way actually to make this whole information consumption much more vivid, because it can be also in a very context-sensitive manner. So you really can find out about, for instance, marketing and sales that are just selected, and finding out if the mandatory attributes in this domain have been maintained already. You can do that as well for some more operational KPIs as well. So about your process performance, where you get data from third-party systems, for instance, or from process mining applications like ARIS Process Performance Manager. Or you can see, as an example here, really monitor the process changes and the change request over time and the workload which is there in your transformational activities. So really create new way actually to bring KPI, to bring decision information into the ARIS Connect environment, which serves as a single point of truth. And you can for sure do the same as well on your landing page. So if you have people who need to have access to certain dashboards, basically, then you see on the landing page, they can click on the dashboards and can have a look at the process change dashboards or about the usage dashboards in order to understand how the system is being used at the moment. So create ways actually to bring KPIs and decision information into the whole portal environment that you can see here. One last thing that I want to show to you before we get back to the slides, because I get asked so often basically how easy or how difficult is it to make adaptations to your specific needs. And I'm just changing the configuration I created through what we call the self-service configuration, where I have a user interface where I can upload a logo, can change some colors. And I just show you something that I created in just 20 minutes, basically, where I changed the tiles, where I deleted some of them, basically, where I created here, my content is the same as we've seen before, but then I created here a custom link into a start model here for my landing page. I also have some third-party systems that I'm loading here in the iframe, or I want to have the travel approval from the intranet being shown there. So really, let's say, simple changes you can make yourself through a user interface. And as I said, I did not invest more than 15 or 20 minutes in order to get this configuration done here. So that's something that you can do for sure as well on your own. But if you have more experienced use cases, if you want to have more changes and other views, for instance, then this is something that you can achieve easily with the ARIS Connect environment as well through the so-called XML configuration. So let's get back to the slides, because I got asked very often about the use cases, more from a technological or feature viewpoint, and basically how to get started with ARIS Connect. And basically, from a high-level perspective, when we ask ourselves what we achieve typically with ARIS Connect, I like very much those three examples. So one is that you are designing change, that you want to roll out change. For instance, in the context of your SAP standardization programs, where you really have to have different people with different working styles in the past, now, they have to work against the common standard which has been designed. And those people for sure have to have the information about how those common working styles look like. What are the new work procedures or operating procedures which are in place? So this is a really nice use case. And another nice use case is the one that I mentioned at the very beginning already, really creating this single point of truth, this spot, which is some kind of a central information hub. Everybody in your company knows to which system they have to go in order to find about what are our processes, what are the documents I have to consider to get my job done, and so on. So this is a really nice use case that we call the enterprise management system. And then it's as well about running transformation projects. You might have a project which takes 3, 6, 9 months, or even a year, or 2 or 3 years. You have different people which are onboarded all the time, maybe consultants working. You have a lot of collaboration in place. So with the ARIS Connect system, you can easily have a new project environment being instantiated where the people can actually work on their own, and where they have no interruption with other people involved. So this is a nice use case I see as well. Being a little bit more specific, how to get started with Connect if you haven't worked with Connect yet. So it typically starts with the publishing. So you see the text-based overview I've shown you, or the steps. That's a typical starting point with ARIS Connect. So when you have your ARIS database already in place, so if you're not new to ARIS, then basically this already creates a huge added value using the simplified views. Next step typically is to think about the documents in your organization. So you might have different third-party applications in place where the documents are managed. So thinking about some standardization here and bringing the information back into the single point of truth clearly adds value to all companies who are doing this. Then it's about release cycle management and managing the process of change, basically. So having an understanding how change requests flow in, how you are planning them for a release, making then the changes and approving those changes in a way that you can finally retrieve the information again. Who made which approval at which point in time is something which is very important. And the out-of-the-box workflows are a good starting point, but for sure you can create your custom views and custom governance workflows as well, which is typically being done if you already have an understanding on governance in your organization. And then it's for sure starting with simple configurations like the one I've shown you before. So simply upload a logo, change your view, or create a custom landing page like the example I've shown. If you're more advanced, then it's typically about more the engagement of your end users, maybe through collaboration or through contribution. So people can ask questions, can give comments, can like something, or you can even invite those people actually to contribute to the content. So ask them about giving you the description of a certain task or discussing about the description of a certain task so that you get a common understanding on what's being done in a certain process. Then it's about driving analysis possibilities. So there's a lot you can do in terms of reporting, and there's some functionality called highlighting. Then it's about rollout in a more role-based manner. So with the new My Content functionality that I've shown you today, you don't have to configure anything at all. So it really works out of the box. People get into the system, search for their role, and then get the content they need. For sure, you can extend it and can decide, do you want to show processes? Do you want to show tasks? Do you want to show documents? Whatever. That's basically up to you. And it's for sure as well getting the buy-in of the management by adding decision-relevant information at the point where it's actually needed. So a process owner might be interested in a process landing page where they see the information about the process, how it is being exposed to the organization at this very point in time, but they also want to see actually what was the performance of my process in the past 3 months and want to have some slice and dice drill down functionality as well. So then this is a great way to think of this ARIS Aware and dashboard in this context. So summarizing this, especially for those
among you who are not so familiar with Connect. When you are considering Connect, are using this already, maybe then it's basically that you get modern capabilities which are easy to use and which add additional value to your organization. So with the collaboration, with the contribution, with the governance and so on. It's modern technology, future-proof. I can't repeat that as often as possible. You might not be interested so much into this, but basically it pays off for you as well if you invest in a technology which is fit for your future use cases as well. So just imagine that you want to move to the cloud at some point in time. Then with a modern technology on ARIS Connect, which is based on a cloud architecture, you can, by just a few clicks, basically make the change in the cloud, and it's not a huge migration project you have to consider. It's about user acceptance, so giving the people really a digestible access to the single point of truth is something which is really, really crucial, and where I believe that we make a good job with ARIS Connect. And as a consequence, it's for sure about low training needs, because when you're running through change projects, transformation cycles, you do not want to invest it's a lot of money into the training of the different people, and want to make it for sure as efficient as possible. It's about the total cost of ownership as well. So what I did not mention too much today, ARIS Connect is a highly configurable product, and you do not have to customize too much. So you really can make changes in a way that they are stable from one release to the next release in order to save money and save time. Future development is important because there might be still a few customers using the ARIS Publisher. And for them, it's important to understand basically what's our strategy at Software AG with the publishing in the future. And there's a clear message that ARIS Connect is the only platform for the future for the publishing. So you see that as well with the investments we made in the past, with the new releases. So that it's really an ARIS Connect-based environment in the future. And for everyone who's using still Publisher, I clearly advise to consider the move on to ARIS Connect in the future. And the last thing I want to mention was also a major reason for Connect. Basically, it's a platform which is also fit for your mobile and additional integration purposes, because with ARIS Connect, we offer the so-called mobile API that you can use out of the box, so you don't have to pay for this additionally in the ARIS Connect environment. And basically can create your own apps for your own dedicated mobile use cases. So this is also a very important topic if you have such a use case. There's more information on different places. So at the Software AG website, you find information about ARIS Connect. As our ARIS Cloud environment, www.ariscloud.com is also based on ARIS Connect. This gives you a good impression basically on what it does. So there are also demo videos in place. You can have a look at them. Then in the ARIS community, you find how-to videos on ARIS 10 and ARIS 9. Links are here, so presentation will be provided to you later on. So this gives you also good impression on the product from a plain vanilla perspective when it is not configured, if you want to find out about how it looks like in that scenario. And then there are some nice customer videos where people are talking about their transformation activities and how ARIS and ARIS Connect has helped them as well. So this was today the first webinar. So there are also a few other webinars in the future. So there's one on December the 7th about GDPR. So we all have to get compliant according to changing European laws in terms of data security. That's important. Then I will have another session on ARIS Cloud in early January, because we see so many customers moving to the cloud and considering a cloud-first strategy or a cloud-future strategy. So I will talk about the different ARIS Cloud editions we have, and basically how a migration from on-premise to cloud looks like. And then there's on February the 1st an ARIS for governance, risk and compliance webinar scheduled as well, and there will be more in the future too. So that was enough, and I think it was quite a lot, 3 minutes before the end. So I think we now have some additional time for questions. So if you have a question, just feel free to post your question into the chat window now. At the moment, I don't see a question. I know it was a lot of information. There's a question coming in. So there's a question. Is it possible to use the view generation functionality based on more than one model? Example is based on an eBPMN model for which we would like to show objects assigned through relations which are maintained through a functional allocation diagram that has been assigned to an object in scope of the eBPMN model. That's a very good question. So the short answer is yes. The information from the view generation is coming from basically the definition of the information. So you can have the information also coming from FADs. But there's a but. What can be shown in the model needs to be defined by the model. So it needs to be an object which is, for instance, allowed in an eBPMN model or in a pure BPMN model. So you cannot have objects which are coming from an FAD, but which are not allowed in a BPMN model, for instance, shown there. If you have a high freedom of choice with a model type, like with the EPC, then for sure you can easily add information also from assigned function allocation diagrams. So I think for the eBPMN, we should have a look at what is allowed in terms of an additional object, and then in general, yeah, this should work. So there's at the moment no additional question. So in this case, I want to thank you all for your attention. I know there was quite a lot of information in today's webcast. I hope there was something new for you in it. And yeah, I want to thank you again and wish you all a nice morning, afternoon, or evening. So thank you very much and goodbye.